Welcome back to another episode of FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. I'm Craig Haley, along with co-host Gary Reasons. Gary, tell us where you're at. How you doing?
Well, I'm in Nebraska here, actually Omaha, Nebraska. Here it's early morning, but just had finished up my visit to our wonderful friends just north of here in South Dakota, and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes.
That's part of Where's Gary, our second segment weekly with the FedEx Ground National On-Campus Awards. Now, Gary, you know FCS Delivered can be found in many places on podcast platforms. There's Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and other podcast platforms. And some of you may be watching on our YouTube channel. Hopefully, all you have to do if you're not doing that is search for FCS Delivered. And in our second segment, you'll be able to watch all the video from Gary's trip to the University of South Dakota this week. Now, Gary, today's episode, we're headed towards week 6 of the FCS season. Wow, first weekend of October. We'll look back at a wild week 5, of course. We'll talk maybe a little NFL draft as well and do more on your on-campus visit, and then we'll set up week 6. Are you ready for week 6, Gary?
Craig, I am more than ready for week 6. I'm suited up. I've got my gear on, and I'm ready to go.
Glad to hear it. Well, a wild week 5 this past weekend, and 8 top 25 teams lost games, 6 of them to unranked teams. So really it made a big impact on our Stats Perform FCS Top 25. Did you find the weekend surprising?
Really, it is a little surprising, but in the grand scheme of things, when you start playing conference games, and really you take a look at one conference in particular, Missouri Valley Conference, seems like they play a ranked opponent every week. And those guys really have to kind of just have their A game every single time they play. And so that's what we're going to get here. When you see these conferences that have a lot of entrants in our top 25 poll, there's going to be some ups and downs and some surprises along the way.
It's a good point, Gary. Conference play does that. I feel like every year we have this kind of weekend, and I'm talking every year, where suddenly everybody thinks it's the most wild and wacky weekend ever because there's so many top 25 teams losing. So I think you nailed it. It's because of conference play, and the bigger conferences certainly have more ranked teams. Now, our FedEx Ground week 5 game of the week was Elon hosting William & Mary. William & Mary, one of the ranked teams that went down, number 5, 14-6. Elon scored 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns. Matthew Downing touchdown passes. That's how they pulled it out. What a terrific game, Gary.
Yeah, well, Bronson Yoder was out of the ball game, so unfortunately, didn't have enough there. So, but it was an interesting ball game, and that was one of those, like you talked about, Craig, as far as teams meeting each other and just got to play it out on the field, and that's one of the examples of what we had.
Yeah, credit to Phoenix. I mean, those 2 touchdowns going into the fourth quarter. William & Mary had gone 15 straight quarters without allowing a touchdown to the opposing offense. And the Phoenix got it done. In fact, they're playing another ranked game this week. Elon, they're hosting North Carolina Central. So there's no let up when it comes to schedules this time of the year. Now, that game and all these upsets had an impact on our Stats Perform FCS 25 presented by FedEx Ground. One of them being South Dakota, where you're at this week for your on-campus visit, upsetting North Dakota State in the Fargodome, 24-19. With North Dakota State's loss, it allowed Montana State to move up to number 2 in the poll behind South Dakota State. Obviously, they met last month, 20-16. South Dakota won that game. Idaho moved up from 4 to 3. And then the Bison, they dropped to number 7 from number 2 last week. We'll talk a little more about South Dakota in your on-campus visit. But let's talk Bison. I mean, they seem to drop quite a bit when they suffer a regular season loss. In the polls, it seems like people maybe a little fatigued with them always being at the top and dropping pretty far. 7's kind of a far way to go for them. It's the lowest they've been in the polls since 2015. Is this a time for them to worry?
Well, Craig, I think that the Bison do have some things to worry about, simply because they have to continue to fill their who their team is, find out who they really are offensively, defensively. You've got some new faces on campus, and really that's what happens. And when you play at the level that the Bison do year in and year out, you're going to have a big target on your chest, and that's what teams are looking at. And anytime you have an opportunity to knock off potentially the number 2 team in the country, which happened a week ago, that is what the Bison are going to be facing. Even though they slipped in the polls down to 5, 6, 7, whatever the number may be, I still think they're a quality football team. They're going to pull things together. But, everybody continues to play for them because of the long tenured history that they have of championships, and that's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I only dropped them number 4 on my ballot. Obviously, 56 voters in our top 25 poll. I do think you make a good point. It's almost like we don't feel like we know this team yet. Their quarterbacks are doing well. Their running backs really need to pick it up here moving forward. Maybe their offensive line. Defense, the tackling's probably a little improved from last year, which was kind of an issue. And they did have a lot of injuries last season. I just think we have to find out who the Bison are. 7, okay, I could see why they were dropped, but they do tend to rise. We always see where they come back in the end. Now it's a matter of whether they can navigate their way back and maybe even be there in Frisco again. Probably South Dakota State may be there, but we'll see. But I do want to mention, with the playoffs, as we're looking ahead, I put out a post last week on X, formerly Twitter, that the playoff selection committee, they are going to have a top 10 ranking either at the end of this month or the beginning of November. An in-season ranking, they do it so often on the FBS level where they'll have a special show and show you their top 25. Here it's a top 10. It started in 2016. The playoff committee had it on ESPN, a top 10. It stopped the last 2 years. I think it draws interest in the playoffs. Fans look forward to it. So that will be happening this season. Right now, I think it would obviously be South Dakota State number 1 in their reveal. And then it's a matter of Idaho or Montana State. We'll see where it goes. But that is something to look forward to. Where they'd have the Bison this week would be quite interesting. Now, as we move forward, I just want to go back to something we talked about in the preseason. We talked about NFL draft and FCS prospects. We rely on Josh Buchanan, NFL Draft Scout, and Phil Steele publications. He has really tuned into FCS prospects. We talked his top 10 at the time. I do want to point out that it's a very good in-season update that Josh has done for the Ivy League, especially. Karan Amaghetto, as we know, the Yale offensive tackle, still number 1. But the Ivy League also has Javis Travis, Princeton offensive lineman, Thor Griffith from Harvard. He's been, some of our watch lists and finalists before. You've seen his list, and Josh, just talk about an in-season, just, how players perform, and whether it's important to have good game film.
Well, obviously, it is important for these players down the road to have some history that they have played well in key games. That's really how they are. They can talk to the coaches about their character. They can talk to the coaches about how they work with their teammates. But, the game film is really what is going to set these guys apart, as well as the testing that they go through. But as you're here in season, these football players all across the FCS, I don't care whether you're ranked or unranked, you're just trying to win football games at this point. You're not really worried about, your NFL draft prospects or anything like that. That's all secondary. And it has to be when you have the team concept that every FCS football team has. So I think that some of this will play itself out, Craig. You talk about some of these guys, like Pius and Dylan Lobby, how they can move in there and do different things. There's some movement there. There'll be some guys who are kind of shining, and it's noticed by the NFL scouts. There's certainly a lot of eyes now focused on FCS football, like we talked about previously. 1 out of 5 players come from the FCS ranks in the National Football League, so it's a great ground for new players to come into the NFL, and we've got quite a few possibles here this season.
Yeah, you're right. When you count active rosters and practice squads in the NFL, there's generally about 200 players total, which is just a phenomenal number. Last year, there were 11 former FCS players drafted. There's been some big years. I agree. And you mentioned Dylan Lobby. That's probably Josh's biggest riser, the great running back from New Hampshire, who's just an all-purpose threat. He really has skyrocketed in Josh Buchanan's in-season ranking. So that's a good one that you pointed him out. So we'll see where it goes. Obviously, you're right. The focus should be on the season, but that little extra chip that on their shoulder that FCS players have when they're sort of in the shadow of the FBS, that comes out during the All-Star games and the combine and the lead up to the NFL draft. So you're right. The focus should be on the regular season right now, and let your game film show the scouts what you can do. So we're going to take a break here, and we will be back with more FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground.
Rehearsals for the school play were really coming along.
Bigger smile, Mr. Squirrel?
Until a custodian accidentally threw away the costumes.
Oh no!
Everyone was rattled. Miss Garrity forgot how to play. And the Queen of the Hedgehogs almost quit.
Find a new queen!
But replacement costumes were shipped with FedEx. And with added peace of mind from picture proof of delivery, everyone could focus on the perfect opening night. FedEx, where now meets next. For residential delivery only.
Welcome back to FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. Craig Haley along with Gary Reasons. And this is Gary's segment each week, segment 2 of our weekly podcast. It's FCS On-Campus National Awards presented by FedEx Ground. Gary visits a campus every week and presents one of our 5 weekly National Award winners. And week 5 had some good ones. I'll tell you about the offensive player first. It was Eamon Woods, the running back from Marist. He led a win over Stetson in the Pioneer League. 67-yard touchdown on Marist's first play from scrimmage. And then Eamon went on to rush for 232 yards, their first 200-yard rusher in about 15 years. 38 carries, tied the school record. Just a big week all around for Eamon Woods of Marist, our FedEx Ground FCS National Offensive Player of the Week.
Well, Craig, our defensive player of the week, FedEx Ground defensive player of the week is cornerback A.J. Lopez, young man from Harvard. And they got a 38-28 win over Holy Cross. In that ball game, he had 5 tackles. Check this out. Pick 6 in the second quarter. Then he forced a fumble and a pass breakup in the fourth quarter. Had a huge game. So A.J. Lopez, our FedEx Ground defensive player of the week.
Yeah, when you're an unranked team and you knock off a ranked team like Holy Cross was number 6, it does draw notice. That's a good one. Our FedEx Ground FCS National Special Teams Player of the Week, New Hampshire, Charles Briscoe III. It's our second winner from New Hampshire this week. That's the first school to do that. It was in a loss to Towson, but it was just too good of a performance to deny for Charles Briscoe. 2 punt blocks. One he recovered for a touchdown. The other one set up a New Hampshire touchdown. He forced a fumble on the opening kickoff of the second half. You just can't do much more than that on coverage teams. Charles Briscoe III, New Hampshire, our Special Teams Player of the Week.
Very good, very good. Hey, and our freshman player of the week, Dean Nobile, quarterback from Lafayette. They won 56-22 over Bucknell, and he had 4 touchdown passes in the second quarter. And he's also 16 for 23 on the day, 229 yards. And he had a passer rating, Craig, of 210. That's pretty high to get. It's hard to see a 200 passer rating. So congratulations to Dean Nobile, quarterback from Lafayette, our FedEx Ground freshman player of the week.
Outstanding indeed for Dean. Our FedEx Ground FCS National Team of the Week is the South Dakota Coyotes. We talked about them earlier, a 24-19 win inside the Fargodome against North Dakota State. South Dakota never trailed in this game. 21-3 halftime lead. Dennis Shorter, their safety, was up for our Defensive Player of the Week. He was an honorable mention selection. Just a great performance by the Coyotes to go there. They're 3-1 overall, only an FBS loss. They're 1-0 in the Missouri Valley Conference. They became the second team to have multiple wins against North Dakota State. 2 wins since 2011, the first year of the North Dakota State National Championship. They've won 9. But only one other school has 2 wins over the Bison in that time, South Dakota State. And now South Dakota has done it as well. So great performance for the Coyotes. And that brings us to where you're at this week, Gary. You visited South Dakota to present the National Team of the Week award. But we seem to find you in a a gymnasium in Nebraska in a hotel? Tell us about that.
I've got to get my pump on here in the morning, so I decided to come down to the gym, and I said I'm just going to record this show right here. So I got my pool in the background here, and didn't jump in there. I touched it. The water's just a little bit too cold for me. I'm just not one of those guys. But I stayed here in the gym, and I decided, okay, I'm going to get some time in here and then put this show together here for you guys. But hey, I am having a blast. I am in Omaha, Nebraska. Just came back from yesterday from South Dakota. Went to Vermillion, where the home of South Dakota is. University of South Dakota is a tremendous university. The Coyotes have tremendous tradition. It is a beautiful place. It really is. And we enjoy being on campus. And they play well in the Dakota Dome. South Dakota has a very, very intimate facility, and it is a cool place to play. Their football headquarters are all right there in the middle of the Dakota Dome. And we're going to take you right through the locker room here just to get a glimpse of what South Dakota is all about. This football program is prideful. They're on the rise. They had a tremendous outing a week ago, as we've talked about, against North Dakota State. And really, this football team is pretty pumped. We had a chance to spend a lot of time with them, and we saw their players, talked to a couple of them, talked to the head coach as well, and it was a lot of fun. Bob Nielsen has got this program where it needs to be. He's been there for a number of years, a couple of FCS playoff appearances under his belt. They're looking to get right back there this season. So that's something that is pretty cool for this football program. And what they did last week against North Dakota State was pretty impressive. A couple of long touchdowns, big touchdown plays in this ball game. They got out on top. They never looked back. They allowed, check this out, Craig, they allowed North Dakota State defensively a 9-minute drive, a 10-minute drive, but they turned those drives around by only allowing field goals. They could not get the ball in the end zone. North Dakota State is just kind of trying to get the ball in the end zone, and it just wasn't happening with the Coyotes playing great defense. You talked about that young man. So we had a chance to visit with them, present the award. Coach Nielsen was very hospitable to us, and it was a blast to be on campus. This is a tremendous facility and something fun for these players to be around and see. We had their attention, and it was a lot of energy there. These guys are just primed and ready to go. Coach Nielsen was very hospitable to us, and we couldn't be more appreciative. We had our representative from FedEx Ground there as well to talk to these players. That's Brock Morganson on the left and the quarterback, Aiden Bauman. So both of them, I presented the FCS National Team of the Week here along with Coach Nielsen. So it's pretty good stuff, and it was a lot of fun to be there and seeing the Yotes.
You've certainly had a tremendous run with all these campuses you've been to. This was week 5, obviously. It's a lot of work. Now, let me ask you something. The FCS campuses, there's 128 this season, football programs. And some of them are in big markets, but some of them aren't. Like, you look at, say, the Dakotas. They may not have the pro teams that are in some of the other states. Does that create a different vibe on how their athletic teams and football are perceived on campus?
Yeah, that really does take over, Craig. And, I've lived in the state of Oklahoma for a few years. And then, I realized what it is like there. Those collegiate programs become their pro teams. They really get behind them in a huge way. We have South Dakota State, and obviously in South Dakota, big programs, very well supported by the local communities there. And that's what the FCS is. There's a bunch of medium to smaller communities that house these tremendous programs. And when you do not have an NFL team or any kind of a major sports franchise in those markets, hey, the collegiate programs are the ones that really the local people get around in a big way. Now, sure, they all have their favorite NFL and other sports teams, but the collegiate programs, as you talked about, really do come out right on top.
Gary, obviously rewarding the teams and the athletes are one of the reasons you're here for these on-campus visits. Can you tell us a little more about the whole recruitment aspect from a FedEx Ground perspective?
Yeah, it's really pretty simple, Craig. The FedEx mentality really is around their body of employees and staff and people that are working for their company. It's a very large organization, FedEx Ground, over 200,000 employees across the country, and they like the student athlete mentality, and that's why they're partnering with us to bring that on campus. And they really would like to get right in front of the student athletes, which we're able to do so, and to basically just share with them about FedEx Ground, a little bit about them. Derek Horner was here, who was one of the local representatives from Sioux City, and he came up and talked to the team as well. So able to get right in front of the student athletes and share with them. Basically, when your playing days are done, consider the FedEx family as a potential career path. Really nothing more than that. So FedEx.com/careers and take a look at it. And it's a great opportunity for student athletes to get involved with a very worthwhile company. And the company really enjoys being a part of what we're doing.
And not just student athletes, a lot of them are scholar athletes. So really enjoyed seeing your visit here to the University of South Dakota for your on-campus visit for Week 5. We'll be back after this break for more FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground.
When someone accidentally threw away the school play costumes,
Oh no.
replacements were shipped with FedEx. And with picture proof of delivery, everyone could focus on the perfect opening night. FedEx, where now meets next. For residential delivery only.
Do you like what you're hearing on FCS Delivered today? For more national FCS coverage, please go to theanalyst.com throughout the week. We're the home for the FCS Top 25 Media Poll and the weekly and season-ending FCS National Awards, presented by FedEx Ground. We also take you across FCS Nation with stories, predictions, and an inside look. The FCS coverage can be found at theanalyst.com. Welcome back to our final segment of FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. Craig Haley along with Gary Reasons. We are set to talk week 6 in the FCS season. And Gary, we've been talking the Stats Inform FCS Top 25 poll, the FedEx Ground Weekly Awards. You can find all that coverage on theanalyst.com. Also on X, formerly Twitter, is our most popular social media. That's at FCS_stats, STATS, at FCS_stats. Now, Gary, we're heading into week 6. It's a big one. There's a lot of key matchups from all the conferences, including some of the smaller ones have some big ones. Obviously, we have 3 undefeated teams here going into October. South Dakota State, number 1. Southern Illinois, they're both 4-0. Harvard is 3-0 after that big win over Holy Cross. We're going to talk pick'ems here with some of the games. Tell us about week 6, Gary.
Well, week 6, we can kind of start them here, Craig. You want to take a look at the Montana and UC Davis game? Take a look at that one here. You know, I still think that Montana's still got something that they're going to be a little more proud of. I think I'm going to go with Montana in this football game. The Grizz, they're doing a good job on defense, and I think that they're going to continue to, their good play. And so for Montana and UC Davis, I'm going to go with the Grizz.
Yeah, it's a big one because they're both 1-1 in conference. So 2-1 is a big difference from being 1-2 when you're in such a big conference where the schedule is relentless. I agree about the Grizz. I don't think they've been the better team all season than UC Davis. I think the Aggies at home probably are definitely the favorite here. I just think the Grizz have it in them to maybe pull it out. Clifton McDowell took over at quarterback last week, had a pretty good debut. So I just think the Grizz are a little focused. Obviously, there's a lot of criticism out there that they're not quite a 4-1 powerhouse this year. But I think you're right. I say the Grizz get it done on the road. Now let's go to the Big South OVC Football Association. This is a pure OVC kind of matchup. UT Martin 4-1 at Eastern Illinois, also 4-1. They're both UT Martin's 1-0 in conference. It's a big game because Eastern Illinois has its most wins since 2017. I know you've seen them before. Tell us who wins this game.
Well, I did. I saw Chris Wilkerson's bunch at Eastern Illinois last weekend, and I was pretty impressed with what they did. They're more of a team that is built on not making mistakes and a team that is going to play solid defense. They're not going to be flashy on offense. That's not their ball game. They're going to play good structured football. But that's the same way the UT Martin plays as well. So this is going to be one of those teams what team doesn't make a mistake? I'm going to go with Eastern Illinois just because I've got a little familiarity with them this season. And I think that they're going to probably get it done in the end, Craig.
Yeah, they're at home, and you're right about mistakes. I mean, Eastern Illinois has they've gained 13 turnovers from their opponents. I think it's third in the nation. They are getting it done. This is a big matchup. If they win this, wow, they'll really take charge. They're getting votes below the top 25 in our top 25 poll. So this could put them in the top 25 with an upset. I'm going to stick with UT Martin. Sam Franklin's the national rushing leader. I think it's a close game. I do like, though, your pick. This is a fun one to look at. Now, we talked about some of the smaller conferences. The Pioneer Football League. Butler at St. Thomas. St. Thomas is the defending champion. They still aren't eligible for the FCS playoffs. They're their third year of a 5-year transition period from the Division III level. But they get it done. 29 straight home wins dating back to their Division III games. Is there an upset brewing?
I say yes. I'm going to go with Butler in this, Craig. I think quarterback Brett Bushka is going to have a game today. I think he's going to be out there getting his team focused, and this is going to be a chance for Butler on the road really to kind of take it to St. Thomas, and probably a pretty big victory for them.
I like your pick, Gary. Butler here as well. It's an upset. That winning streak that St. Thomas has at O'Shaughnessy Stadium is pretty daunting. But I think Jair Mitchell, the running back, has added a big difference maker to having Brett Bushka behind quarterback. I'm going to go to the Bulldogs as well. They're trying to make the playoffs, so I think it's a great pick, Gary. Now let's go down to the SWAC. Florida A&M at Southern. They were the preseason picks in the divisional races. Right now, Florida A&M is sort of in control in the East. Southern is tied for the West Division lead. It's a great matchup. Florida A&M has won the last 3 times. I'm going to go the FAMU Rattlers in this one.
Yeah, I think you're on the right path there, Craig. FAMU does a pretty good job offensively. Quarterback Jeremy Musa, he leads the SWAC in passing, so that's something that they're going to continue to do. I've got Florida A&M with the Rattlers, winning here pretty convincingly.
Okay, I like it. All right, now let's go to our FedEx Ground FCS National Game of the Week. It comes from the Southern Conference. It is Western Carolina at Chattanooga. It's the 49th time meeting between these two programs. It's the first time both programs are nationally ranked going into the matchup. Tremendous game all around. Western Carolina at Chattanooga. Tell us a little more about this game, Gary.
Well, Craig, I think that this is a game where we've got an offense here. It's the number one offense in the FCS. We're getting 528 yards. That is Western Carolina, and they're tied for 6th with points scored at 39 plus. So I think that I'm going to go with Western Carolina in this one. They've got a 4-game winning streak, and it's pretty impressive what they're doing, throwing the ball, running the ball, and I think Western Carolina gets a hold of Chattanooga pretty good.
They have had a tremendous season, only an FBS loss. Chattanooga has really come on strong. I do think because Western Carolina has been so strong early, Furman's been in our top 10 the whole time. I think people are forgetting how good Chattanooga has been playing. Obviously, Alan Ford, their running back, is the marquee player. Their defense is probably a little better in Western Carolina. It's certainly a toss-up. I'm going to go to the Mocs at home. But I think your pick, Western Carolina, is excellent. I think either way this game could go. It's just a fun FedEx Ground FCS National Game of the Week. Now, it also is homecoming at Chattanooga. Times have changed, Gary. Is homecoming at a college campus still a big deal? Or maybe has it faded a little bit over time?
I've been on college campuses calling college football games for 30 years, and every time that we go on campus for a celebration for homecoming, it's a big deal still. There's something meaningful to those students and those student athletes at that university, and really it gives the alumnus a chance to come back and fraternize once again. So, yeah, I'm going to say that it is still a big deal on college campuses to have homecoming weeks, and for those that are upcoming, I hope you have a great homecoming week and enjoy your college football weekend.
Well, you had the spoiler coming this week with Western Carolina at Chattanooga. We'll see how it goes. Now, Gary, of course, is in Omaha, Nebraska. He doesn't even have to work out today. He's in better shape than all of us. He's looking good. We look forward to his on-campus visit next week. It all comes together after a weekend of FCS action, so we don't know where Gary's going to be from week to week. We're looking forward to it. Gary, we want to thank FedEx Ground and Stats Reform for bringing our FCS Delivered podcast. Seth Biley and Graham Bell are our producers, getting it done behind the scenes for us. Tell us about your weekend ahead. What are you thinking?
Well, it's going to be a good college football weekend for me. I'm going to have a chance to multi-screen, get a chance to look at a lot of games, and have a good solid weekend. So I'm not going out calling a ball game this weekend. I'm going to be in the man cave, so to speak, and looking at a lot of screens and catching a lot of football. But that's a fun weekend for me, and I enjoy it.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Well, Gary, we hope you have safe travels. We hope everybody enjoys the Week 6 schedule ahead. We thank you for tuning in to FCS Delivered, presented by FedEx Ground. We will see you next week.